I was reading your chapter on your latest book, Presence, and the chapter that's titled Presence and Involvement.
Chapter 7. Yeah.
Yes, it's seven or eight. Yes. Yes, seven, exactly. Uh, and the subtitle is Personal Perspectives on Countertransference. So, as I went through it, you categorized two kinds of countertransference, reactive and responsive. The therapist's ability to differentiate between these two, and then you link it to involvement and presence. Could you explain it a bit more?
Well, I think we have to back up and talk about what is transference first.
Okay. Right.
Uh, the definition I like of transference is that it is an expression of a universal psychological striving to organize experience and create meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because of that, it's the means whereby the patient can demonstrate their own past, what happened in their life, how they responded. And particularly, they demonstrate their self-regulating strategies that were used to compensate when there were relational disruptions. So that in a way, transference is, as Freud called it, a replication of old stories. He
Mm-hmm.
actually called it a facsimile, right,
Mm-hmm.
of what had happened before. Um, but transference involves much more, the reluctance to feel the discomfort of fully remembering something, and, and at the same time, an unaware enactment of earlier relational disruptive experiences and the desire to achieve resolution in a relationship. So, transference is really a very active story. Um, and I don't think we can do a serious psychotherapy without the transference because that's how the person tells us what needs our attention. Um, in the same way with countertransference, we cannot escape our own internal organization of our life experiences. We
Mm-hmm.
can't escape our physical sensations, our affect, our own cognitive processes, how we behave. So every therapist brings their own story also to therapy. This is one of the reasons why I think it's absolutely important for psychotherapists to have their own in-depth psychotherapy, as
Mm-hmm.
well as regular ongoing supervision or involvement in a peer group or training workshops. So, in a simple definition, we could say that countertransference is composed of emotional, imaginative, or behavioral reactions that a psychotherapist has when they are stimulated by the client.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those stimulated reactions can be either what we call a reactive countertransference
Mm-hmm.
or a responsive countertransference. All right. Reactive countertransference is an expression of the psychotherapist's own internal conflicts, of their own emotional reactions about the unfinished business in their life. That is the traditional definition of countertransference. Um, from Freud's time, even today, among most psychoanalysts. But
Mm-hmm.
we also have what we call a responsive countertransference. That's our attunement to our client's affect, their rhythm, their developmental way of making meaning. Right. So we're in a responsive countertransference when we are compassionate with their sadness, or when we are angry at the person who abused them, or when we are patient and sensitive to the needs that they're expressing, or when we communicate with respect and choice and probably even tenderness. So we're responding to what is healing in the client.
Mhm.
So there's a long answer to your short question.
Yeah. My next question would be, so would you say that the therapist's development would be generally to understand the reactive countertransference, but also to develop a capacity for responsive uh, countertransference? Like,
Absolutely. That's that's the purpose of the therapy for the
yeah,
therapist.
and the goal of supervision.
Also, yeah, to help that therapist identify the difference. In that book chapter, um, I gave an example of working with a client who was not an attractive looking woman at all. She was very skinny, um, but I found myself sexually excited in her presence. At
Mhm.
first, I thought that this was a reactive countertransference. I wondered what was missing in my life that suddenly someone like this is sexually giving me a sexual arousal.
And
And
that was not typical what you were attracted to, right?
not at all. Um, so I talked to a friend who had been the chairperson of the ethics committee of my association, and she suggested, "You're picking up something. You know, this is not like you, Richard." And that led me to eventually inquiring about what her life was like as a young adolescent. And
Mm-hmm.
and what she revealed then, within a couple of weeks, was how she had been sexually molested between the age of 11 and 14 by her father. As soon as I had that information, I no longer felt sexually aroused by her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what I thought was a reactive countertransference was also mixed with a responsive countertransference because I think she needed me to feel that story that she was so ashamed to tell.
Mm-hmm. And was it kind of like an identification?
I think so. You know, it's like the more experienced we are as a psychotherapist, the bigger the antennas are that we grow. And these antennas are like a radio receiver. The
Mm-hmm.
client comes in and unconsciously is the radio broadcast, and we
Mm-hmm.
pick it up. And then our task is to make sense of what we pick up. I mean, this is what Fairbairn called projection and identification. The client projects out what they can't handle inside, and the
Yeah.
therapist tunes in and picks it up.
So the classical approach was more avoiding it, not having it at all. But an integrative psychotherapy approach would be to recognize it and feel it and respond to it.
Yeah. Um, we, to ask ourselves a series of questions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I give you some of the questions that I actually guide people when I'm doing supervision in, to ask themselves, are my feelings such as affection, boredom,
Mm-hmm.
disregard, disgust,
Mm-hmm.
the active expression of my own experience, or am I responding with something intrinsic in the client's history?
Mm-hmm.
Or, if I worry about a client at night, is that a reactive countertransference, or am I feeling normally protective,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if I love them like I love my own children? Does that mean that there's some problem within me?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that I'm picking up and responding to what is essential in the therapeutic process? Or if I feel angry at how the parent has mistreated the child, am I enacting my own unresolved anger at being mistreated?
Mhm.
Am I having a normal kind of response and how that client needed somebody to be angry at an abusive parent? So those are some of the kinds of questions that I ask myself and I ask supervisees to think about.
Yes. Yes.